Infinite Evolution, starting with Captain America Serum. Chapter 1. Marvel Earth, February 11, 1990. North America, California. Deep in the desert, a hidden Hydra underground research base. In Sample Area A3, the air was filled with the smell of disinfectant, blood, and scorched skin. The cold metal walls reflected a pale light, and dozens of men and women lay in rows of transparent cages, their eyes filled with numbness and despair. Click, click. The metal door of the experimental hall slowly opened, and a black soldier, fully armed, escorted an iron cage out. Inside the cage was a robust but scarred Asian youth. On the back of the young man's prison uniform, a dark number was printed, X-17. However, no one knew that the soul in this body was no longer the original person, but Josie, from another world. That's right, just like the common trope in countless novels, he had transmigrated and been reborn. 2 months ago, Josie was just an ordinary office worker on Earth. Right after the National Day holiday, he was laid off by his company and returned to his hometown to clear his head. One day, he went hiking alone in the countryside, intending to overlook the beautiful scenery from the mountain peak, but a giant spaceship, like a mountain, suddenly fell from the sky and crashed down. When he opened his eyes again, he was already in this bloody hell. There was no explanation, no interrogation, what awaited him was only injection after injection, extraction, modification, and experimentation. Everyone in the cages understood that they were merely experimental consumables for product optimization, and even death was a luxury. After a series of harsh metal scraping sounds, the iron cage stopped in front of a glass cell at the end of the corridor. Around the corner stood a white soldier. "Hey, Paul, long time no see." The black soldier escorting him saw him and greeted him with a smile. "Why are you on duty today?" "Where's Onder?" "He was transferred to field duty, so I'm covering for him for the next few days." Paul, the white man, replied, turning his gaze to Josie in the cage, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Oh, X-17 is still alive. Is it not his turn for experimentation today?" "How could that be? Those perverts in the research lab kill a few every day," the black soldier said with a cold expression and cruel tone. "It's a pity, this guy's life is even harder than a cockroach's. All the samples from his batch died long ago, yet he's still holding on." Paul clicked his tongue, a hint of teasing in his voice. "Haha, I just wonder if he can survive the radiation test 2 days from now." "Are you kidding me? If a yellow-skinned monkey can become a super soldier, I'll twist my head off and let you kick it around like a ball." The black soldier scoffed, pulled open the cage, roughly dragged Josie out, and kicked him into the cell, muttering curses. "Get in there quickly, stop dawdling, you disgusting thing." The bulletproof glass door quickly closed, cutting off their unrestrained laughter. Pain still spread throughout his limbs, but Josie's dark eyes were as deep as a stagnant pool, completely undisturbed. For over 60 days and nights, he had long grown accustomed to this hellish torment. But he had never given up hope. Like most transmigrators, he also gained his own golden finger. Upon arriving in this world, Josie awakened a transcendent power. A lucky gift from the endless void, awakening the innate talent, infinite furnace. You will possess extraordinary willpower, memory, scientific thinking, and basic physical attributes. Infinite furnace. Josie, ephemeral, beginner. Creature attributes 10.5, strength 2.3, constitution 0.7, 2.5, agility 0.4, 2.4, spirit 5, genetic damage. Bloodline imprint 3/5 iron will, profound iron excellent 34%, photographic memory, profound iron excellent 8%, wisdom insight, special. Life essence 4/10. World residency time 50 days 14 hours 36 minutes 34 seconds, rule adaptability 2.3%. Note 1. The average attribute for a normal adult male is 1.0, and the upper limit for a top athlete's single attribute is 2.0. Note 2. Wisdom represents a creature's scientific thinking and comprehension of principles. Note 3. Daily life essence plus 1 unit. It was precisely by relying on his extraordinary iron will and physical attributes that Josie endured round after round of inhumane experiments. According to his observations during this time, this place was a secret biological research base of Hydra, whose main task was to develop various genetic weapons. Among them, the most important and highly valued project by the higher-ups was the Super Soldier Serum. That's right, it was the key agent from the Marvel works of his previous life that transformed Captain America from an ordinary person into a superhuman. And Josie was the one among many test subjects who lasted the longest. Now, he was about to face a moment of life and death, also a critical stage of the serum experiment, the Beta Ray irradiation experiment. Only by surviving this stage could the serum be perfectly activated, and he would undergo a complete metamorphosis. But in reality, ever since Dr. Abraham Erskine was assassinated by a Hydra spy during World War II, neither the United States, SHIELD, nor many other factions like the Soviet Union or Hydra, had been able to restore the complete serum formula. The versions currently in use were all incomplete and inferior. The products created by these junk serums were mostly unstable results, similar to the Winter Soldier, with confused minds, violent spirits, and fleshly deformities, requiring frequent injections to maintain their effects, completely incomparable to Captain America. Therefore, to this day, no one had walked out of the energy chamber alive. However, Josie had been silently waiting for this day to come, because it would be his only opportunity to escape from this demon's den. Closing his eyes and concentrating, his consciousness entered a void of silent darkness, where a silver-white star, emitting a blazing light, quietly floated in the center, illuminating its surroundings. This was Josie's spiritual world. The silver-white star at the center was the mental manifestation of the infinite furnace. Around the silver-white star, which was about a jong, roughly 3.3 meters, in size, a circular orbit was faintly visible, upon which three fist-sized grayish-white spheres of light floated, the manifestations of his other extraordinary abilities. As his thought descended, another brief piece of information appeared in his mind. Smelting material. Super Soldier Serum, smelting quality, profound iron, excellent, 69%. The gift from the void was his greatest reliance for survival and thriving in adversity. The infinite furnace, fueled by his accumulated life essence, refines and optimizes all things to acquire extraordinary power. The inferior serum originally injected into his body had long been intercepted and continuously refined. Over 2 months, the serum's grade had risen from the lowest, inferior, to excellent. As long as he successfully absorbed the Vita rays and converted enough life essence, he would gain extraordinary strength comparable to Captain America, or even stronger. Looking at the disfigured test subjects in the surrounding cells, some of whom were even children, Josie's hatred for Hydra reached its peak, and his chest burned with murderous intent. Once I escape, Hydra will pay the price. But the immediate priority was to adjust his physical state and prepare for the radiation experiment. He recalled the tragic sight of the test subject in the adjacent cage, who had endured for half a year, being melted into a puddle of mud by the Vita rays half a month ago. He absolutely would not allow himself to become that disgusting sight. With a slight thought, a cool, warm current emerged from his chest, transforming into a trickling stream that seeped into his limbs and bones. In an instant, the intense pain dissipated, and the wounds all over his body began to slowly close. The organ lesions caused by genetic disorder within him rapidly vanished. After 15 minutes, under the effect of the life essence, Josie's body had largely recovered. Aside from the numerous hideous wounds still remaining on his skin and muscles, cellular damage and organ failure were promptly brought under control, and his constitution attribute rose back to 2.0. Life essence, 3/10. As for why he didn't fully recover. Firstly, it was to deceive the Hydra researchers and avoid exposing any abnormalities. Every cell here had hidden, comprehensive monitoring devices that recorded the physical data of each test subject in real time, so every action needed to be very careful. Once he was under close surveillance by Hydra, his subsequent actions would become very troublesome. Of course, Josie wasn't acting rashly. In fact, he had done this more than once or twice. He had used this method several times during previous life-threatening situations, gradually deceiving the Hydra researchers into believing it was a genetic trait produced by the super serum. Because of his peculiar self-healing ability, he was even regarded by Hydra as a high-quality sample, further avoiding many dangerous experiments. On the other hand, life essence was naturally too scarce. He needed to save some for unforeseen circumstances. The acquisition of life essence was linked to two factors: his four-dimensional attributes and his physical condition. The cruel experimental environment and poor food supply kept Josie's body in a long-term state of hunger, injury, and illness, allowing him to barely acquire less than 4 points per week at most. Previously, to endure the torment of the serum experiment, he had also invested some essence into iron will, to strengthen his mental defense and prevent his sanity from collapsing. After all, in his previous life, he was just an ordinary person. Inside the control room of Serum A3 experimental zone, an Asian woman in a white lab coat, with a stern face, stood in front of the monitoring screen. To her right, a middle-aged man, similarly dressed, leaned back in a chair. Both stared intently at the monitoring screen, where lines of data and fluctuating curves rapidly flashed across the old-fashioned LCD screen from the 1980s. Hydra's advanced monitoring system had captured an abnormal signal the moment Josie's body showed signs of mutation. Sample X17 is showing this situation again. The Asian woman narrowed her eyes and spoke in a low voice, "Professor Reed, what do you think?" The middle-aged man, referred to as Reed, finished browsing Josie's physiological data and, after a few seconds of contemplation, replied, "The data doesn't show any major problems. Compared to previous times, the range of change is within normal limits." He paused, then turned to ask, "Naoko, do you still think there's a problem with sample X17? Haven't we already tested it several rounds? It's different." Takahashi Naoko frowned and took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on Josie in the cage on the monitor. She slowly said, "Since 2 months ago, after X17 experienced a brief period of suspended animation, it seems to have undergone some kind of mutation. His neural stress tolerance is several times beyond the safety threshold, yet he shows no signs of disorder. His mental fluctuations are abnormally stable, completely inconsistent with conventional biological response patterns. And his recovery ability, it's definitely not just ordinary cellular regeneration. This guy is definitely problematic. I recommend conducting focused tests, strengthening monitoring, and suspending X17's radiation tests." Reed glanced at her, feeling quite speechless. He didn't completely dismiss Naoko's judgment, but he also found it difficult to agree with her claims. "Naoko, it's indeed rare for an East Asian to persist for so long. But you also know that biological diversity often brings surprises. Perhaps X17 is a naturally compatible serum recipient. We've seen experimental subjects stranger than X17 over the years, so don't overreact." But enough, no more talk. Takahashi Naoko tried to argue further but was directly interrupted by Reed. The base director's tone was cold and hard. "Instead of wasting time staring at one sample, you should think about the Vita Ray test 2 days from now. The serum experiment has dragged on for too long. If there's no new progress, Baron Zemo will not go easy on us. If you truly believe X17 has value, find a way to extract his self-healing factors. That way, even if the serum experiment fails, we'll have something to show for it." At this point, his tone shifted to a cold disdain as he added, "Besides, it's just an experimental sample, full of diseased cells and damaged organs. What kind of threat could it pose?" With that, Reed turned and walked out of the control room, not giving the woman another chance to speak. Gazing at his retreating back, Takahashi Naoko's eyes gradually darkened. She had joined Hydra too recently. Although she had successfully risen to the core engineering team through her excellent abilities and considerable cunning. Within the organization, however, she was ultimately just a senior engineer, without much say. However, her suspicions were not unfounded. Takahashi Naoko had possessed a special sensory ability since childhood, allowing her to vaguely perceive things that posed a threat to her. It was this instinct that had allowed her to avoid many dangers. Lately, every time she got close to X17, it made her feel uncomfortable all over. To describe it precisely, it was like a small beast in the jungle facing a tiger, even with the iron cage separating them. Even if the tiger was on its last breath, the fear of a high-level predator was etched into its genes. "No, I have to do something. Radiation experiments demand extremely high sample conditions." Over the next 2 days, Josie uncharacteristically received ample food and medical treatment, allowing him to unexpectedly accumulate 2 more points of life essence. After consuming one unit, the serum's optimization progress advanced to 98%, just one step away from further improvement. This raised the success rate of his escape plan by another notch. Now, even without the aid of Vita rays, I might have a chance to escape. In his cell, Josie lay on the cold metal bed, his mind racing. The journey to the laboratory later will be the moment of weakest guard, should I act directly? No, it's too risky. In an instant, he suppressed the restlessness in his heart. Without the catalysis of life radiation, the serum might not reach its perfect form. Super soldier strength alone is still too risky. Josie thought of Steve Rogers' enhancement experience, and a conjecture involuntarily surfaced in his mind. Back then, to complete the experiment, the U.S. military almost mobilized the power supply of half of Brooklyn, equivalent to a full day's electricity for a modern city of 500,000 people. The joke about Captain America being evenly matched might precisely be the extraordinary potential unleashed by super energy. No rush, I have to wait a little longer. I know nothing about the laboratory's layout or defense mechanisms. Rash action will only alert the enemy. Only when the Vita experiment starts and the base's energy experiences violent power fluctuations will be my best opportunity. During previous experiments, whenever the Vita test was activated, the prison area would experience noticeable power instability. This was the key to his entire escape plan. With his thoughts clear, Josie composed himself, closed his eyes, and conserved his energy. Time quietly passed, and the moment for the experiment finally arrived. Click, click, click. The alloy gate of the sample area slowly opened, and a white military officer in combat uniform, holding a firearm, walked in, followed by a team of fully armed elite soldiers. The officer's expression was stern as he ordered the experimental subjects to be dragged out of their cages one by one, completely ignoring their pleas and struggles. Screams and curses rose and fell, and finally, it was Josie's turn. He slowly got up, his gaze sweeping over the Hydra soldiers, including the black soldier who had previously escorted him. Heh, X-17. The officer's lips curled into a sneering arc, his expression arrogant. I've heard of you, a lucky yellow-skinned monkey. You're very calm. Do you think you're different? Or do you think you can really escape? Too bad, you won't get that chance. Facing the officer's taunts, Josie showed no emotional fluctuations, his gaze calmly fixed on the other party. The officer, who had intended to humiliate the other party, suddenly felt an inexplicable palpitation during their eye contact and involuntarily took half a step back. When he came to his senses, his face flushed with a mix of green and red. He subconsciously drew the electric baton from his waist, ready to severely deal with this yellow-skinned monkey. But before the electric baton could touch Josie, he suddenly stopped his hand. Shit. The officer cursed in a low voice, suppressing his anger. If it weren't for today's test, I'd beat you to death. Josie's hearing was keen, and he caught a familiar female voice coming from the officer's earpiece, Takahashi Naoko. Immediately after, the voice spoke again. Quinn, don't forget what I told you to do. Do. What do? Josie's pupils contracted slightly, and a hint of unease arose in his heart. The next moment, Quinn suddenly pulled out a metal syringe from his pocket, a cruel smile in his eyes. Hold him down for me. He wanted to avoid it, but all around him were dark muzzles. Any slight movement would result in him being shot dead on the spot. He could only watch as the syringe was plunged into his neck and chest. A sharp pain came, and two unknown objects were forcibly implanted into his body. HMPH, such precious things, to be used on you, what a fool waste. Quinn spat with a look of disgust, then waved his hand, take him away. Under the escort of dozens of Hydra soldiers, Josie and 7 other experimental subjects were successively led into a large experimental arena. This was a circular area the size of 3 or 4 basketball courts, with 10 gray-black metal capsules neatly arranged in the center. Under each capsule, several thick energy pipelines extended, deeply embedded in the concrete floor, directly connected to the entire base's main energy supply. A faint energy hum emanated, making the hairs on his skin stand on end. On one side of the experimental arena was a control room platform made of high-strength glass. Inside, more than a dozen mid to high-level base personnel were seated. In the center of the command console, Takahashi Naoko and Reed Roberts sat impassively, watching the experimental subjects in the arena. Josie looked at these people, especially the Asian woman who had tormented him countless times. All along the way, he had been wondering what was hidden in that syringe. Parasites. Genetic toxins. Micro bombs. Whatever it was definitely nothing good. The sudden variable severely disrupted his original plan, and he vaguely felt that the escape plan would not be as smooth as he had imagined. Takahashi Naoko, did this woman discover something? While he was thinking, Josie and the other experimental subjects were successively pushed into their respective metal capsules. Their limbs, waist, neck, and even mouths were all locked down by high-strength special alloy, unable to move a single inch, like livestock waiting to be slaughtered. As the researchers operated, tubes of light red hydramide serum were injected into the 8 experimental subjects. The energy capsules quickly closed, and the Vita rays began to irradiate them. Blinding light surged from all directions, colliding violently with the unstable serum within his body. In an instant, an indescribable agony swept through his entire being from the depths of his bone marrow, as if thousands of scorching hot needles had simultaneously pierced his nerves, far surpassing any previous experiment. Ah! Josie gritted his teeth, his veins bulging, his entire body feeling as if it were being torn and incinerated, thrown into a mountain of fire and blades. His iron will firmly guarded his consciousness, and the power of fusion quietly circulated. Massive life radiation continuously poured in, absorbed incessantly by his body and transformed into pure life essence. Life essence +1+1+1, rapidly accumulating. In a few breaths, it had climbed to the current capacity limit. Life essence. 10 out of 10. Josie didn't hesitate for a moment, immediately investing all the essence into serum optimization. Under the surge of energy, the molecular structure of the serum rapidly reconstructed, and the refinement progress quickly soared. Super Soldier Serum, Profound Iron, Excellent Right Pointing Arrow Ultimate. As the information changed, the transformation didn't stop, life essence continued to accumulate, and was immediately invested and consumed again, with the excellent version of the serum's progress continuously climbing. 1%, 10%, 30%, 60%, 90%. Super Soldier Serum, Profound Iron, Ultimate Right Pointing Arrow Perfect. Perfect serum. This was a height that Hydra, and even the entire Earth's scientific research system, could never hope to reach. However, just as Josie was about to completely integrate this perfect serum, an unexpected change occurred. Within his spiritual world, a wisp of scorching white silver light drifted down from the infinite furnace, and instantly merged with the gray-white light orb representing the serum. Correspondingly, the serum's progress reset to 0 again, restarting at the familiar pace. 1%, 10%, 30%, 60%, 90%. Boom. A soft hum echoed from the depths of his consciousness, and his soul seemed to sublimate. In his spiritual world, the gray-white light orb representing the Super Soldier Serum suddenly vibrated, and a dazzling crimson glow spread from its center, instantly covering the original gray. A brand new piece of information emerged in his mind. Life Essence Transformation. Ephemeral Early Stage Right Pointing Arrow, Ephemeral Middle Stage Right Pointing Arrow, Ephemeral Late Stage. Innate Bloodline Expansion. Awakening. Infinite Serum. Before he could react, in the next moment, a vast ocean-like life energy erupted from his body. An invisible storm swept through, like a volcanic eruption, and like the collapse of a star, a terrifying torrent of enhancement furiously poured into every cell, every nerve, every bone. All impurities, genetic damage, and potential ailments were completely purged, and cells cycled wildly between collapse and rebirth. The intense pain rapidly receded, and his spiritual will became infinitely clear. Puff puff. 2 soft sounds came, and Josie's mind slightly shook, feeling his body lighten, as if some foreign objects were forcibly expelled. Immediately, a clear 3D dynamic image slowly appeared in his mind, making him momentarily stunned. This is a detailed analysis of my body, and the surrounding environmental structure. Even more surprisingly, whenever his thoughts shifted, the image in his mind would change accordingly. The 3D dynamic image instantly differentiated, Tens of thousands of ultra-microscopic images and a large amount of environmental information were collected and converged by his senses, precise down to the level of dust particles. Tiny dust particles in the air were now clearly visible in Josie's eyes. Is it a new talent? Psychic power? Mental power? Or something similar to a cultivator's divine sense? The guesses flashed through his mind, but Josie didn't delve deeper. Now is a critical moment for enhancement, I can't be distracted. It's not too late to study it later. His gaze turned cold, and a hint of mockery appeared in his expression. I didn't expect the super serum to actually evolve into the infinite serum, and conveniently solve a big problem. With the power of mental probing, Josie had clearly seen the source of the soft sounds. Two black spheres the size of fingernails rolled into a corner of the energy chamber, which were precisely the unknown objects injected into his body earlier. Now, under his spiritual vision, the structure of these objects was easily seen through. They resembled a type of remote-controlled miniature bomb. Sure enough, that fool Naoko Takahashi is not to be underestimated. I almost fell into her trap. Cold light flickered in Josie's eyes, and he silently pronounced her death sentence in his heart. The enhancement was still ongoing. Josie could clearly hear the agonizing wails of the other test subjects, and with his invisible mental perception, he could even see that the two closest test subjects had completely collapsed. The chamber was filled with charred black flesh, residual organs, and intertwined, melted skeletons, leaving only a squirming black and red sludge, utterly bizarre. As time passed, the surrounding wails gradually ceased, and even the Vita rays were successively shut off. At this moment, only Josie's continuous roars and the low hum of energy remained in the entire experimental field. In the control room, the high-ranking members of Hydra stared intently at the metal chamber. This was already the 48th experiment, lasting nearly 10 years, and they had only barely managed to construct these inferior serums. However, each experiment resulted in almost complete annihilation, with the survival rate never exceeding 1 in 1,000. With massive resources invested and no substantial breakthroughs to date, Baron Strucker had long grown impatient. If no results were produced soon, they might not even be able to leave the research facility. And this time, the situation still seemed unoptimistic. Each time a chamber's light went out, Reed Roberts's face darkened a bit, until only one remained, and everyone had almost given up hope. A mortality rate exceeding 90% practically declared the failure of this version of the serum. But to everyone's surprise, 10 minutes passed, and the agonizing wails in the experimental field still hadn't stopped, their volume robust and showing no signs of weakening. The temperature around the chamber remained stable, with no signs of energy overflow or structural collapse. This indicated that the last test subject was still absorbing radiation. The unexpected surprise rekindled hope within Hydra. Reed quickly beckoned a young researcher. Which sample is this? Pull up all the data for me. Yes, supervisor. This is sample X17. The researcher answered hurriedly, his voice full of excitement. The Vita rays are still being continuously infused. Currently, the radiation concentration in the chamber is extremely high, so direct data collection is temporarily impossible. However, judging from the energy curve and physiological feedback, sample X17 has a very high chance of successfully integrating the serum. The familiar number made Reed pause. He hadn't expected the only survivor to be that Asian kid. This guy really has some luck. The Hydra supervisor looked at the bright light emanating from the energy chamber's glass window, and the delightful wails, and couldn't help but feel infinite possibilities in his heart. If this serum experiment succeeded, his position in Hydra would undoubtedly rise. Perhaps, as he was lost in fantasy, he didn't notice that the woman beside him was not feeling well. Naoko Takahashi's face was unpredictable. A few drops of cold sweat slid down her forehead, and her breathing was slightly rapid. What's going on? This feeling. Since just now, she had vaguely felt an intense palpitation, as if a huge stone was pressing on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. She was very familiar with this state. It was a premonition of extreme danger approaching. Her psychic perception was sending out an instinctive warning, urging her to escape. But this was a Hydra base, with defensive levels comparable to a military fortress, guarded by hundreds of elite armed soldiers. What could possibly harm her? However, this sense of foreboding continued to escalate, making her increasingly agitated and uneasy. Just then, she heard Reed and the researcher's conversation. X-17. Her gaze immediately locked onto the energy chamber in the field, and an incredible thought surfaced in her mind. The source of danger, could it be this guy? Impossible, she subconsciously retorted. Even if X-17 successfully transforms into a super soldier, he could never threaten me. This thought made her feel a little ridiculous. He couldn't even break free from the energy chamber alone. The high-strength alloy restraint device, the numerous automatic machine guns hidden within the circular experimental walls, nerve gas nozzles, ultra-high temperature flamethrower systems, liquid nitrogen cooling devices, and so on. Even if dozens of super soldiers rioted simultaneously, they would be instantly torn to shreds. Not to mention, the cosmic cube bomb had already been implanted in X-17's body. She only needed to move a finger to eliminate him. Who is trying to harm me? Naoko Takahashi's eyes vigilantly scanned her surroundings, trying to find the source of this oppressive feeling. Just at this moment, several piercing warning sounds suddenly rang out from the control panel. The researcher looked flustered and reported quickly. This is bad, Supervisor Reed. The energy radiation intensity absorbed by sample X-17 is too high, and the research facility's energy may not be able to sustain it. If this continues, the sample might not be able to complete its enhancement. Insufficient energy. What a joke. Reed suddenly stood up, looking at the other person with a face full of doubt. The research facility's energy reserves are more than enough to create 50 Captain Americas. How could it not be enough? The young researcher was stunned by his reprimand, momentarily speechless. Fortunately, another person in charge quickly stepped forward to add, Supervisor, the current experiment was originally configured with 5 to 10 times the energy of the Captain America standard. Now it seems there might have been a serious error. I suspect that the lack of certain components in the serum formula is causing the cellular structure to require longer time and higher radiation to complete adaptation and reorganization. Reed listened in silence for 2 seconds. As a seasoned scientific researcher, he also realized that this explanation was not without reason. All other samples died, clearly proving that the current serum version had major flaws, and X-17 being able to persist until now likely possessed unique characteristics, so the energy consumption exceeding expectations was also reasonable. Thinking of this, Reed quickly issued an order. Immediately allocate all available energy within the research facility and fully maintain the energy intensity. I will contact Baron Strucker to request additional energy support. With that, he strode out quickly. Inside the energy pod, life radiation surged and converged. Terrifying energy continuously poured into Josie's body, transforming into nutrients for new cells. Sizzling steam erupted from Josie's mouth, nose, and pores, his skin glowing crimson, like a burning iron block. His hair, originally sparse due to the genetic disease, turned to ash under the high temperature. His psionic power clearly observed the changes within his body. A strange tissue emerged between his flesh and organs, perfectly integrating with his original life system. That unfamiliar organ pulsed slightly, and a peculiar liquid was secreted and circulated. Josie's muscle density, bone strength, cellular self-healing, and antitoxin immunity, among other abilities, surged and expanded at an astonishing rate. His body entered a second growth phase, with muscles, blood, bones, and organs rapidly developing and expanding, an extreme tingling and intense pain sweeping through every inch of his flesh. A series of crisp friction sounds echoed in his ears. Josie observed that the bones and flesh between his chest and back were visibly thickening at a speed discernible to the naked eye. The gaps between his sternum and ribs were completely filled, and the plate-like ribs of his upper body even fused into a single entity. The unknown liquid continued to flow, filling every inch of space in his flesh. Josie felt as if a layer of titanium alloy armor had covered his skin and tendons, protecting his body tightly. His height, originally less than 1.8 meters, soared to nearly 2 meters in just over 10 minutes, with no sign of stopping. The alloy chains on his body constantly rattled, and the feeling of constriction grew stronger. These restraints were no longer able to bind his rapidly expanding physique. Creak, creak. He gently twisted his body, and a series of ear-piercing metallic scraping sounds emanated. The alloy chains wrapped around his limbs broke easily like fragile foam, and then he kneaded them into steel balls the size of marbles. With the restraints removed, Josie devoured the life radiation even more freely. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. His body seemed to have transformed into a bottomless abyss, drawing in an endless supply of energy, without end. What puzzled him, however, was that after such a long time, Hydra had yet to cut off the energy supply. Josie no longer had any worries about leaving this place. His current strength was definitely much greater than Captain America's, even comparable to or surpassing Spider-Man. Forget it, who cares, if someone is offering, just eat. He no longer paid attention to Hydra's arrangements, completely immersing himself in the baptism of energy. What he didn't know was that in order to maintain the energy supply and ensure the only successful serum sample, Reed urgently contacted Hydra's core figure, Baron Strucker. What? The super soldier serum was successful. Yes, currently sample X-17 shows far greater resilience than previous test subjects, its physical load-bearing capacity is still continuously increasing, and energy absorption has not stopped. Reed lowered his voice, a hint of trepidation in his tone. Far away in a European manner, Baron Strucker slammed his hand on the table, excitedly rising, his face filled with wild joy. Good, excellent work. Activate the backup cosmic cube energy source. I will immediately contact the surrounding city power grids to fully cooperate with you. If necessary, even if it means sacrificing deployments in the entire city, the enhancement must be completed. In less than 5 minutes, Hydra's backup energy system was fully activated, and the main power grids of 2 surrounding towns were forcibly taken over, with massive amounts of energy continuously pouring into the research facility. Inside the energy pod, violent electrical arcs and high-energy radiation surged. During the enhancement, which was several times faster than normal, Josie's body once again expanded dramatically, his height breaking through a terrifying 2.3 meters, his muscles like carved steel, the entire person resembling an ancient god descending. Another full half-hour passed. However, energy absorption still hadn't stopped. Inside the control room, Hydra engineers looked horrified. According to the calculated data, the total amount of energy injected into Josie's body so far was close to the explosive yield of a medium-sized nuclear bomb. Something's not right. How could the super soldier serum enhancement consume so much energy? This is too abnormal, one engineer muttered, his face pale. The atmosphere in the research facility grew increasingly oppressive, and finally, some began to suspect that something had gone wrong with the experiment. Reed, at the main console, also looked grim, staring intently at the data on the control panel, unsure of what decision to make. He had already boasted to Baron Strucker. Cutting off the power supply would very likely lead to experimental failure, and he would be finished, but continuing the power supply, the consequences were equally unpredictable. At the same time, Takahashi Naoko's psionic perception reached its peak. An unprecedented sense of suffocation assaulted her brain, that feeling of impending death, like a towering wave, almost shattering her sanity. Now, she could finally confirm, X-17 in the energy pod was the source of the crisis. Cut off the energy transmission immediately. Mobilize all security forces in the research facility, full alert at the X-17 experimental site. Finally, Reed still gave the order. Because that oppressive aura was so strong, even ordinary people could clearly perceive it. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Boom! A colossal metallic explosion echoed, and the entire experimental site vibrated violently. The energy pod, built entirely from aerospace-grade alloy and difficult for even autocannons to penetrate, was now torn apart by 2 enormous hands. Electrical arcs splashed, and white mist billowed. A terrifying figure slowly emerged from the flames. With a horrifying physique over 2.5 meters tall, his naked skin was fiery crimson, blood red, steel-like muscles writhed like living things, his eyes glowed with a cold black light, and the rampant aura he exuded was like a destruction engine. Bang! Josie raised his hand and flung it, sending a large number of alloy steel beads shooting out from his palm. Centered around him, the forward fan-shaped area was instantly swept by a metal storm. Wherever it passed, sonic booms roared. Several Hydra soldiers nearby, who hadn't had time to react, had their bodies torn apart like rags, instantly exploding into clumps of shredded flesh, with severed limbs scattered everywhere. Bang bang bang. The high-speed steel beads continued their trajectory, undiminished, plunging into the special concrete wall, blasting out deep pits about an inch in size, with stone chips flying everywhere. What is that thing? Oh no! The faces of the Hydra soldiers on alert in the distance changed drastically, and they quickly raised their guns to aim. The leading sergeant major shouted loudly, "Test subject possibly out of control, all personnel level 1 alert." Click 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 click. Blinding high-power lights suddenly illuminated the area, all focusing on the center of the experimental pod, and dozens of muzzles simultaneously locked onto the tall figure. The sergeant major sternly ordered, "Test subject, I order you to immediately cease provocative behavior, put your hands on your head, and squat down for orders. Repeat, immediately cease attack, squat down where you are and don't." Before the commander could finish speaking, a steel bead came whistling, directly piercing his skull. PFF'd. The steel helmet was useless, and red and white fluid mixed with bone fragments burst forth, dragging the corpse backward. The next moment, Josie's figure suddenly vanished from his original position. Dull explosive sounds then erupted in the field, and each time the air vibrated, a plume of blood-red mist rose. The Hydra soldiers had no time to react. The enemy, with terrifying might, had already slammed his fists directly into their chests and heads. Attack! Full attack! Gather! Quickly move towards me, don't let him pick us off one by one. Careful, he's behind you. Da da da. Ah. Gunshots and gunfire intertwined. The remaining Hydra soldiers resisted desperately, but it was like hitting a rock with an egg, and they were instantly swept away. Inside the circular experimental site, screams rose and fell. The Hydra researchers in the control room could only watch in horror through the monitoring screens. A blurry blood-red figure flew by, tossing severed limbs. In just 7 or 8 breaths, over 30 fully armed Hydra soldiers were slaughtered, not one surviving. How is this possible? The super soldier serum, it can actually enhance to this extent. This is unscientific. The Hydra members behind the control panel screamed in terror, their eyes filled with disbelief. Just then, on the large screen in the control room, a deep, cold voice sounded. "Reed, is this the super soldier you created? It seems to have exceeded expectations." "Baron, I." Reed's face was pale, his voice trembling as he tried to explain, but he was directly interrupted. "Haha, no need to say more. Excellent, absolutely perfect." On the screen, Baron Strucker let out a burst of wild laughter, his eyes flashing with unprecedented greed and excitement. "What a perfect creation, compared to this, what is the so-called Captain America worth? This will be the key to a new world. You must capture this guy for me. Immediately activate the defensive self-defense system." In an instant, the lights in the experimental site suddenly extinguished, and heavy mechanical operating sounds came from all around. In the darkness, more than a dozen aircraft cannons slowly descended from the ceiling, more than a dozen flamethrowers extended from the walls, the circular wall cracked open, and dense machine gun holes all aimed at the center of the field. X-17, let's see where your limits are. As Baron Strucker's words fell, countless crimson gun flames lit up simultaneously from all directions of the experimental site. Bang 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 bang. A torrent of explosive metal poured down, shooting towards the terrifying figure in the field. The moment the attack weapons appeared, Josie's figure vanished from his original spot. Clang! Clang! An energy capsule was torn in half by a powerful force, and the damaged experimental subject fell out. With a flick and a twist of his giant, fan-like palm, he instantly transformed it into 2 sturdy alloy shields, holding them on either side of his body. His arms moved like the wind, leaving trails of afterimages as he blocked most of the attacks. Even if a stray bullet penetrated his defense, it only left an imperceptible white mark on his skin, which healed in the blink of an eye, causing no substantial harm. Looking at the scorching flames coming his way, Josie bent his knees slightly. Bang! A shockwave exploded, and the concrete floor instantly collapsed. His figure flashed 7 or 8 jong away, leaving a huge, foot-deep crater where he had stood. His legs moved effortlessly on the hard wall, and he swung the alloy shields in his hands, like 2 sharp scythes, scattering shattered gun parts like rain wherever they passed. Illuminated by the Gatling gun's muzzle flash, a series of black afterimages weaved through the defensive array. Each heavy blow landed with a deafening roar, and thumb-thick cracks rapidly spread across the walls and floor. The defensive weapons in the testing ground were completely unable to cause Josie any harm. Gunfire grew sparse, flames died down. In less than half a minute, all weapons were destroyed, and the testing ground fell back into silence. In the control room, Reed and the others trembled, feeling as if the scene before them was a nightmarish illusion. What kind of monster have we created? On the large screen, Baron Strucker stared at the scene, momentarily stunned. Clearly, the power Josie displayed had far exceeded his expectations. A hint of fear and regret quietly emerged, but was quickly swallowed by a deeper layer of greed. Capture him. We must obtain this power. Without the slightest hesitation, Baron Strucker immediately ordered, lower the protective layer at once and trap X-17 in the testing ground. We must obtain his genetic sample. However, it was too late. Just a split second before his words finished, Josie suddenly leapt, like a cannonball fired from a barrel, and slammed into the control room direction just before the protective steel plates could drop. Boom! Amidst a terrifying explosion, the 20-centimeter-thick bulletproof glass shattered. A terrifying shockwave swept through the room like a destructive force, sending all indoor objects flying. Glass shards turned into a rain of flying knives, and more than a dozen researchers were instantly slaughtered. Blood and gore flew everywhere, a scene of extreme carnage. Reed, who had not yet recovered from the shock, was hit square in the chest by a large piece of glass. Half of his body flew and embedded into the wall. It was clear he wouldn't survive. Kicking aside a corpse, Josie coldly scanned the room, but did not see the familiar figure. He casually grabbed a struggling researcher, his gaze icy. Where is Takahashi Naoko? I don't know, she was just here. The researcher's face was ashen, his voice trembling like a sieve. Please, don't kill me, I'll do anything. He asked several other surviving researchers, but none provided a satisfactory answer. HMPH. Knowing nothing, what good are you? Josie's face was stern. With a flick of his palm, alloy steel beads shot out, cutting down the remaining Hydra members. Escaped. I'd like to see where you can run to. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he heard a gloomy voice from behind, X-17. Josie paused, turning his head to glance at a remaining screen on the wall. In the blurry image, Baron Strucker's expression was sinister, staring at his godlike figure. I admit, we underestimated you. Your power is immense. You are not a weapon, nor a failed experiment, you are a miracle. Unexpectedly, Strucker's tone suddenly softened, revealing a deep, meaningful, and seductive allure. You may not realize it, but the world is crumbling. Only the strong can rewrite order. Join us, Josie. No longer the designation X-17, but his original name, Josie, was spoken. This core leader of Hydra slowly raised his hand, interlacing his fingers, his tone as if speaking to an equal. Join Hydra, and we can offer you everything you desire: money, power, weapons, women. You do not belong to those foolish humans. They will fear you, betray you, and try to destroy you. But we won't. We can create the beginning of a new world, and become true gods. Gods. Money, power. Faced with this ridiculous temptation, Josie's expression was indifferent, his voice cold and sharp. Haha, these things, I will obtain with my own strength. A group of things that only dare to hide in dark corners, are you even worthy of talking about a new world? And what I want now is to kill you rats in the gutter. Hydra, enjoy your last moments. I will crush you dirty things, little by little, and make you understand what true hell is. X-17, don't push your luck. Listening to these threatening words, Baron Strucker's face gradually turned cold, his tone sinister. Do you think you can stand against Hydra alone? You are just a failed experimental monster. We can create you, and we can also destroy you. Next time, it won't be these ridiculous researchers who appear before you, but our hounds, our legions, our. Without listening to this guy's nonsense any further, he punched and shattered the screen. Josie suddenly turned, smashed through the wall, and headed straight for the deeper parts of the research facility. Thousands of miles away, at a secret Hydra estate somewhere in Europe. In the office, Baron Strucker sat behind a large command table, his face ashen as he stared at the screen in front of him. Very good, excellent, you foolish thing. I will make you understand how tragic the consequences will be for daring to challenge Hydra's will. While gritting his teeth and cursing, Strucker reached for the phone and dialed an encrypted channel. Beep. Beep. A few seconds later, a middle-aged man's voice came from the other end. Respectfully, Baron, what are your orders? Something happened at the California Second Research Institute. The serum test subject mutated and escaped. All personnel at the base, annihilated. What? The person on the other end exclaimed, then lowered his voice and quickly asked, Sir, what do you need me to do? Strucker ordered coldly, Mitchell Carson, I want you to immediately mobilize SHIELD forces, go to the incident location, seal off the scene, isolate everything in the Institute, and erase all traces. His tone grew even colder. Remember, you must not let the American military or government find out, and certainly not SHIELD. Understood, I'll personally take care of it. The call ended, Strucker returned to the control panel, tapped the keyboard, and the screen lit up again. Numbers flowed like a waterfall. Gray-green pixel dots converged, gradually forming a blurry human face. SS's, Strucker, you don't look so good. Another serum experiment failed. The cold, blurry electronic voice entered his ears, causing the Hydra leader's face to twitch violently. Cut the nonsense, Zola. You can't tell me you don't see X-17's value. We must get him under our control. The phantom image before him was another core figure of Hydra, Drive. Arnim Zola. During World War II, Zola was Red Skull's chief scientist, developing a large number of advanced weapons. After the defeat, he was captured, recruited by the United States in Operation Paperclip, secretly entered SHIELD, and orchestrated Hydra's covert resurgence from behind the scenes. More than 10 years ago, suffering from a terminal illness, he uploaded his consciousness into a giant computer located in a secret SHIELD facility in New Jersey, becoming Hydra's electronic life. So what do you intend to do? Zola's voice remained cold and flat. Strucker took a deep breath and said bluntly, ordinary armed forces cannot pose a threat to X-17. I want to activate the Winter Soldier program. You need to get Howard Stark's serum research data as soon as possible. Howard Stark. Zola's voice paused slightly, a subtle electronic ripple. Indeed, it's time to deal with Howard. This guy has been acting crazy lately, secretly investigating SHIELD. He might have already found some clues. Then get rid of him sooner rather than later to avoid further problems. Strucker's tone was cruel. However, this doesn't align with the original plan, Zola said in a deep voice. Howard was supposed to die during the upcoming collapse of the Soviet Union. Only an event of that scale would be enough to divert America's attention. Otherwise, it could lead to uncontrollable variables. It's too late. Once the experimental subject escapes, if he falls into the hands of Howard and Peggy Carter's group, the consequences would be unimaginable. Baron Strucker's expression was sinister and resolute. We must immediately eliminate this unstable factor, even if it means paying some price. The gray-green pixelated face on the electronic screen flickered a few times. A massive amount of data was instantly calculated and analyzed by Zola, quickly yielding a conclusion. A few seconds later, the Hydra leader said coldly, all right, I will activate the Winter Soldier to deal with Howard. Seeing Zola accept his suggestion, Baron Strucker rarely showed a hint of a smile. This incident at the research base would be a considerable blow to his prestige within Hydra. As the end of the century approached, modern technology developed rapidly, and super soldier technology no longer held appeal in the eyes of many. Whether within SHIELD or Hydra, more people were keen on high-power technologies such as mechanical power armor, high-precision missiles, and electromagnetic energy weapons. In their view, no matter how strong a super soldier was, one missile would still turn them to ash. Therefore, within Hydra, especially the North American and Asian branches, there had long been considerable doubt and opposition regarding Strucker's massive expenditure to recreate the super soldier serum. After this incident, someone would surely seize the opportunity to cause trouble. Fortunately, Zola chose to stand by him. Moreover, despite the experimental subject losing control, the terrifying power displayed by X-17 precisely confirmed his foresight. The potential of biotechnology was no less than that of other technological streams. Zola's willingness to support him was perhaps due to this consideration. By the way, there's another piece of news you might find interesting. Zola's face gradually faded from the screen, leaving only a low, electronically synthesized voice. News from the African base indicates that an unknown metal has appeared on the pirate black market, reportedly very similar to the material of Captain America's shield. Perhaps this material can help you deal with the out-of-control X-17. Consumed by surging rage, Josie rampaged through the research base. Within the entire Hydra base, the most heavily guarded and well-armed areas were the experimental and prisoner sections, and he had already destroyed more than half of them. The remaining security forces, facing such overwhelming power, couldn't even last a single round. Along the way, every Hydra member he encountered met a gruesome end, all blasted into fragments. After being enhanced by the Infinity Serum, his mind and 5 senses reached unprecedented heights. His sense of smell, in particular, became almost as keen as a beast's. Naoko Takahashi, the woman who had caused him immense harm, her scent had been firmly imprinted in his brain. Even if she managed to escape, there was no way she could evade his tracking. Gas molecules in the air entered his nasal cavity one by one, precisely captured by his highly active olfactory cells. In just 2 seconds, his brain, comparable to a supercomputer, completed its analysis, pinpointing the woman's trajectory. This was like certain superpowered individuals in movies, evolving to see, sense with their eyes. Soon, he arrived at an empty prisoner section. In the air, Naoko Takahashi's scent remained strong, indicating she had stayed there for quite some time. This is. Bang! The ground beneath his feet shattered, sending several alloy steel plates flying, revealing a hidden staircase leading downwards, from which a strong biological signature emanated from deep within the tunnel. Undoubtedly, the woman had escaped through here. If I let you escape today, I'll take your full surname. Josie leapt directly into the tunnel, rapidly pursuing his prey. A rumbling sound echoed as a train sped along the tracks. Inside the carriage, over a dozen Hydra members looked tense, their helmets muffling their still shaken gasps. As that monster, still human. A soldier's hands trembled, his eyes filled with terror. 5 combat teams, wiped out in an instant. We've unleashed a demon from hell, and he's going to kill us all. Shut up. Everyone calm down. The commander roared, forcefully suppressing everyone's emotions. He's just an aberrant experimental subject. As long as we get out of here and contact external support, with Baron Strucker and Hydra's power, we can definitely eliminate him. Right. You're right. A soldier tried to compose himself, attempting to self-soothe. No matter how strong he is, he's still just a carbon-based life form. Hydra has tanks and planes, weapons that can destroy the Earth. What's a mutated monster compared to that? These words seemed to inject a sliver of courage into the collapsing group, and their chaotic emotions stabilized slightly. But Naoko Takahashi, at the very front of the carriage, remained silent, her face ashen. Because she realized that even having fled here, the mountain-like pressure in her heart had not dissipated in the slightest. The commanding officer seemed to notice her unusual state and walked over to comfort her. Dr. Takahashi, you don't need to worry. That monster is still in the upper levels. This passage is extremely secret, it's impossible for him to find it. Naoko Takahashi ignored him, only urging the driver beside her, faster, accelerate. But the speed is already 100 kilometers per hour. Accelerating further would be very dangerous. I said, accelerate. Get out of here. She suddenly looked up, her voice tinged with a suppressed sharpness. As her words fell, she pushed the driver aside and personally took control of the system, pushing the train's speed to its limit, directly breaking through 120 kilometers per hour. A flicker of displeasure crossed the officer's face, and he was about to react. Suddenly, a faint light appeared ahead, the train was about to reach the surface warehouse, and several helicopters were vaguely visible outside the tunnel exit. Excellent. With these things. Boom. Before he could finish, a deafening roar came from behind. Everyone looked back, and their hair stood on end, their scalps tingling with fright. In the depths of the dark tunnel, a colossal, mountain-like shadow rapidly approached, each step kicking up vast amounts of dust and a thunderous boom, utterly terrifying. In an instant, the giant shadow was upon them. Impossible. The Hydra officer cried out in alarm, his voice distorted by fear. Illuminated by the taillights, everyone clearly saw those dark, violent pupils and cold, stark white teeth, like a frigid abyss, vowing to devour them. Don't let him get close, open fire. Quick. Grenades, blow this monster up. Fire, quick, fire. Intense gunfire erupted instantly, dozens of assault rifles and the train's twin-barrel machine gun spewing a scorching hail of bullets. A metal storm roared, capable of tearing apart most medium-armored units. But when it struck Josie, it only sparked brilliant flashes, leaving only faint red marks on the surface of his skin. Furthermore, as the attack grew more ferocious, the Infinity Serum, hidden within Josie's body was reactivated. Pale blue liquid seeped from all his pores, rapidly covering his entire skin, semi-solidifying on the surface into a glistening transparent carapace that easily blocked all bullets and explosions. Why did such a creature appear? By Hydra, we've created a devil. Looking at the indestructible giant before them, some Hydra soldiers collapsed mentally, unable to even hold their guns steady. Bang! Josie pushed off with his foot, his body shooting forward like lightning, slamming into the rear of the train. His enhanced body, weighing over 1,000 catties, combined with a burst of speed exceeding 200 kilometers per hour, violently overturned the train, sending the entire carriage derailing out of the tunnel and crashing heavily into the underground warehouse at the exit. Amidst the rolling smoke, Josie approached step by step, his expression indifferent. He lifted his hand and tore open the shattered iron roof of the carriage, looking down at the Hydra members who had caused him such profound pain. Monster, die. Hail Hydra. The next moment, 4 or 5 fanatical Hydra soldiers staggered to their feet, rushing towards Josie with desperate roars of madness. The highest-ranking officer among them even grabbed 3 grenades, seized the moment, and leapt up, attempting to pounce on the monster before him and die together. You fell for it. Haha, Hydra is the strongest. However, Josie's figure blurred, easily dodging the attack, giving them no chance to get close. After several explosions and screams, the tunnel returned to silence. Amidst the train wreckage, a group of Hydra members, covered in their own excrement and urine, screamed frantically for their lives. This sight stood in stark contrast to the fearless Hydra soldiers from before. No, don't kill me. Don't kill me, help. You monster, I'll curse you. Among these people, Josie clearly saw several familiar faces. The black soldier who had previously escorted him, the prison guard named Paul, and the Hydra officer who had personally injected him with the micro-bomb. Not one was missing, they were all here. We really are fated. Without any superfluous words, his giant fist descended. Several dull, thump, thump, sounds followed, and blood mist bloomed like flowers, white and red intertwining, splattering on the iron plating. In just a few seconds, there was no more sound in the carriage. Among the wreckage, only Naoko Takahashi remained, slumped on the ground, her blood-stained face devoid of color, her eyes filled with despair. Mercy, don't kill me. I know Hydra's secrets, and many technologies, I know their bases, and a lot of money. I can give it all to you. Please, don't kill me. I'll tell you everything. The woman spoke incoherently, tears mixed with snot covering her cheeks, completely devoid of the arrogance she once displayed when slaughtering innocent test subjects. Josie's eyes rolled with fierce light, and his giant palm suddenly reached down, lifting Naoko Takahashi like a chick, his 5 fingers slowly tightening. Pain. No, no. Tell me everything you know. I'll tell everything. Feeling the crushing pressure on her bones and the suffocation, Naoko Takahashi endured the tearing pain and quickly spilled everything she knew, even revealing her true identity. It turned out that this woman had another identity. She was originally a confidant of Hydra's high-ranking, Madame Viper, secretly dispatched to Baron Strucker's command to seize technical intelligence when the opportunity arose. Strucker's biotechnology is stored in the core of the research institute. Only read and I know the password. I can work for you. Josie narrowed his eyes, and his mental power quietly spread. He didn't act immediately. His keen perception made him notice Naoko Takahashi's inexplicable fluctuations amidst her intense emotions. This woman was still hiding something. At this moment, he appeared as tyrannical as a devil, but the enhancement of his iron will and super brain kept him calm throughout, and he had already sensed something was off with this woman. From the injection of the parasitic bomb to her escaping a step ahead, it was as if she had known in advance that he was going to attack, absolutely abnormal. You still dare to lie to me. Why did you escape early? Josie's voice was low, and his palm tightened again, as if to completely annihilate her. Wait, wait. Under the pressure of death, Naoko Takahashi finally completely collapsed, screaming, I'll tell. I have superpowers. I can foresee danger, and sense people or things that threaten me in advance. I ran away early because I sensed your danger. Don't kill me, you don't know the terror of Hydra. They can control all of America, my ability can definitely help you. Crisis perception. Josie's eyes narrowed, and his mental power directly pressed down. So you targeted me and escaped early, all because you sensed that I would pose a threat to you. Naoko Takahashi coughed up a large amount of blood, nodding weakly. So that's it, that's quite a special ability, isn't it? Josie stroked his chin, seemingly interested in this ability, and the force in his palm loosened slightly. Naoko Takahashi noticed this and immediately felt a surge of joy, secretly sneering, HMPH, barbaric monster, all brawn and no brains. Once I escape. Before her thought finished, the next second, Josie's 5 fingers suddenly closed. Amidst the explosive sound of bones shattering, Naoko Takahashi was crushed into a bloody pulp. She couldn't even let out a scream. PFF'd. Her head fell, rolled a few times on the ground, and came to rest by the train wreckage, revealing a face with wide, unseeing eyes. A large foot kicked out, and it immediately exploded into a cloud of blood mist. This superpower is good, I'll take it. On the desolate Gobi Desert, vast flames and smoke billowed. Josie looked at the Hydra research facility, now a bombed-out ruin, and only then did the raging anger in his heart slightly subside. He turned his head and glanced at the group of people not far away, all prisoners rescued from the research facility, numbering about 200. At this moment, these people were looking at him with faces full of fear and wariness. Josie didn't pay attention to their reactions, merely reminding them indifferently, there are helicopters and cars in the warehouse over there, equipped with GPS and maps, and some emergency food. They should be able to help you. If you don't want to die, then run away quickly. Rescuing them was already the utmost benevolence. As for their life or death, and where they went next, that was up to them, it had little to do with him. After all, he was also somewhat lost now. He had just transmigrated and been treated as a guinea pig, tortured for over 2 months. Now that he had finally broken free from his shackles, he could at last consider his future life. After a brief explanation, Josie picked up his pack and strode off into the distance, covering several yards with each step. According to the map, I should be in southeastern California right now. Heading north into the Sierra Nevada mountains would make it easier to hide my tracks. He was not suitable to approach any human cities for the time being. Not to mention the mortal enmity he had already forged with Hydra, just his current monstrous physique, over 2.5 meters tall, would undoubtedly attract endless trouble once exposed. Especially on this Earth, which resembled the Marvel Universe, countless dangerous forces were hidden. The American military, S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers, Kamar Taj, and even alien titans and dimensional demon gods, none of them were existences he could easily deal with in his current state. Currently, the most pressing issue he needed to solve was restoring his human form. Secondly, it was to enhance his strength and thoroughly settle accounts with Hydra. Having made his decision, just as Josie was about to pick up speed, a honking sound suddenly rang out behind him. Looking back, he saw a yellow pickup truck approaching rapidly, with 2 men and 1 woman inside, waving at him. He paused his steps, and after the vehicle drew closer, he said coldly, "Why aren't you running for your lives? What do you want following me?" As his voice fell, a suffocating aura spread. The 3 were about to get out and explain, but they were so terrified by his presence that they nearly collapsed, only managing to recover after a while. One of them, a tall, blond white man, trembled as he got out of the car and said respectfully, "Sir, we want to go with you." "No need." Josie refused directly, his face expressionless. "You yourselves should leave quickly." Hearing this, a young woman with delicate features but sharp eyes, standing behind the man, quickly spoke up, "Sir, actually, it's like this. The 3 of us are mercenaries." Through their description, they quickly explained their background. They came from a small Eastern European country called Sokovia, originally part of an elite assault team under its Ministry of Defense. Half a month ago, the three received orders to go to Egypt to carry out a security mission to escort government officials. What was originally a relaxed routine assignment turned into them being captured by Hydra overnight and imprisoned in Hydra's secret base before they even met their escort target. Fortunately, they had just been brought in when Josie's rampage occurred, allowing them to survive. Unlike the ordinary people, the three had a clearer understanding of the mysterious organization's power, capable of secretly building research facilities comparable to military fortresses on American soil. Such an organization was terrifying to even think about, and certainly not something they could contend with. The few of them knew that if they escaped alone, they would eventually be eliminated. To survive, they could only follow this powerful individual in front of them, to have a glimmer of hope. Josie originally didn't intend to pay attention, but the mention of Sokovia caught his attention. This small Eastern European country held an extremely important position in the Marvel universe he was familiar with. It was not only the hometown of the Scarlet Witch, Wanda, and Quicksilver, Pietro, but also one of the important strongholds of European Hydra, and it was completely destroyed during the Age of Ultron, ultimately leading to the Avengers' split and Civil War. Looking down at the three people in front of him, Josie already had some suspicions. They were most likely sold out, and even their superiors might have been Hydra agents. Hey! Josie chuckled lightly and said, "You want my protection? Then what value can you offer?" After the three exchanged glances, the blond man at the head cautiously said, "Sir's current appearance, if exposed to the public, is very likely to be attacked by the American government. We should be of some use in these aspects." After speaking, he looked at the giant in front of him, filled with both apprehension and anticipation. After 2 seconds of contemplation, Josie smiled and nodded in acknowledgement. "That is indeed a small problem, and perhaps I really do need a few helpers." Upon hearing this, joy immediately appeared on their faces, but the very next sentence made their hearts tighten. "However, I cannot entrust my safety to a few strangers." Josie put down the backpack in his hand and took out a metal syringe and 3 small black spheres from it, which were the miniature bombs that Neko Takahashi had once implanted in his body. Through previous interrogations and information obtained from the research facility, he had basically figured out the principle of these devices. They were energy bombs made of special materials, which could be activated to explode by high voltage, causing an explosion equivalent to a hand grenade, and could be controlled remotely or set for timed detonation. The high-energy material used within them was very familiar to Josie. It was precisely the high-energy substance extracted by Dr. Zola, Hydra's former chief scientist, from the cosmic cube. He had found quite a few of these super-energy batteries in the research facility's energy storage room. How about it? The choice is yours. If you want protection, you always have to pay a price, the price of freedom. Josie didn't hide anything, directly explaining the bombs' purpose and also revealing some insider information about Hydra, quietly awaiting their decision. Surprisingly, with almost no hesitation, the three picked up the syringes and implanted the bombs into their bodies. He scanned them with his mental powers and detected no resistance or hidden emotional fluctuations. Very good, a smart choice. Glancing at the scattered crowds fleeing in the distance, Josie calmly instructed, "Let's go, let's get out of here first." Along the way, through conversation, he gradually became familiar with them. The oldest and burliest man among them was Joseph Kane, 32, captain of Sokovia's Iron Wall assault team, a former Royal Special Forces soldier, steady in character, and powerful. Another was 27-year-old Middle Eastern-descended Ali Muhammad, skilled in electronic jamming, explosive demolition, and stealth reconnaissance, a rare technical specialist in special operations. As for the young and capable blonde woman, Lena Castro, she was the youngest of the three, only 24 years old, 2 years younger than Josie. However, she was indeed a true elite talent, a graduate of the University of Munich in Germany, a former Royal Paratrooper sniper, proficient in multiple languages, and worked for Sokovia's intelligence department before being captured. The three were originally serving as translators and bodyguards for a high-ranking government official, but unfortunately, they ended up in Hydra's den. Overall, Josie was quite satisfied. After all, these were individuals selected by Hydra for serum experiments, naturally the best of the best. California, Sequoia National Forest. Deep in the canyon, a redwood cabin stood quietly beneath a rock face, with faint traces of human activity visible around it. As the morning sun shone, an exceptionally burly figure emerged from the cabin, picked up a bucket as thick as a water vat, and walked towards a nearby pond. Splash! Clear water washed over his skin, causing Josie to let out a comfortable groan. After a quick wash, he sat down on a large rock near the water source, quietly enjoying the mental purification brought by nature. More than 2 months had passed since he left the Hydra research base. During this time, Josie led a team of 3, trekking over 1,000 kilometers, successfully changing their identities and temporarily settling down here. As his mind settled, his consciousness drifted into a void realm. Information appeared in his mind. Infinite furnace. Josie, ephemeral, high tier. Innate bloodline 1/1, infinite serum, bronze normal 1.2%. Creature attributes 55, strength 12, physique 14, agility 13, spirit 16. Bloodline imprints 3/6 ironwool, Langanese normal 15%, photographic memory, Langanese normal 8%, wisdom insight, special. Life essence 50-50. Smelting materials. Touch of calamity, Langanese normal to excellent, spacetime particles, bronze fragment, 0.03%. World residency time, 250 days 21 hours 19 minutes 39 seconds, rule adaptability, 8.7%. Note: 5 units of life essence daily. With the miraculous infinite serum, Josie achieved a complete transformation, a true leap to greatness. During this period, he continuously tested himself, conducting a series of evaluations from strength, speed, neural response, immune recovery, to resistance to attacks. The data showed that he could easily lift a 5-ton boulder with one arm, and his full body explosive power was estimated to exceed 20 tons, surpassing Spider-Man's normal level. His maximum speed broke through 200 kilometers per hour. He could run continuously for more than 4 hours, carrying 3 tons, at a speed of around 100 kilometers per hour, without feeling significant fatigue. His neural response and physical body defense had already been verified during combat training at the Research Institute. The movements of ordinary soldiers appeared as slow as snails to him, essentially dozens of times slower. Facing heavy firepower like machine gun barrages, he could clearly capture every minute movement. Before the bullets left the barrel, his super brain could calculate the optimal dodging path, or he could directly withstand them with his physical body unscathed. As for immunity and self-healing, perhaps these were Josie's strongest abilities. A 5 to 6 centimeter deep wound could completely heal within 2 minutes, leaving no scars. More severe injuries, such as those affecting internal organs and major arteries, could recover at dozens of times the speed of an ordinary person. All of this, in the final analysis, stemmed from the serum tissue, newly formed within his body. A few days ago, in order to further study his own evolution, he specifically used equipment from the Hydra Research Institute to dissect himself, attempting to extract a small serum sample. However, he quickly discovered with surprise, this tissue simply could not be extracted. More accurately, the serum tissue did not exist. Josie could indeed observe the light blue substance permeating his flesh and bones through psychic power telekinesis. But when he actually cut into his body, those substances were completely untraceable, as if they did not exist on a physical plane. This phenomenon left him utterly perplexed. In desperation, he turned to studying the liquid derived from the serum tissue, leading to an astonishing discovery. The peculiar liquid derived from the serum tissue not only greatly enhanced Josie's physical body strength but also built a nearly abnormal biological immune system. This liquid possessed extremely strong corrosiveness and expansiveness, any foreign substance not of his own body. Once it came into contact with it, it would almost always be corroded and devoured in a very short time. Even steel and rock were no exception, comparable to super aqua regia. But if his own cells were damaged, the liquid would transform into a super healing agent, stimulating cell activity, breaking down and plundering external nutrients, and accelerating wound repair. Currently, it seemed that most human biological viruses, chemical toxins, and even super radiation could no longer cause him effective harm. Instead, they would continuously strengthen his immune system. In summary, as long as he wasn't directly hit by a rocket or anti-material weapon, he was essentially invincible. Josie could be described as possessing immense strength, invulnerability to blades and spears, and immunity to all poisons. Besides the leap in his physical aspect, Josie's other three talents also underwent a transformation, further elevating his growth potential. Of course, as his strength increased, so did the consumption. Initially, the iron will of the profound iron grade only required 3 units of life essence to upgrade from normal to excellent. Now, the upgrade of manganese quality directly consumed a full 30 points. A tenfold difference, which drained 60% of his reserves in one go. However, these changes were not the most crucial. What truly concerned him was another core characteristic of the infinite serum, infinite adaptation. Infinite adaptation, in simple terms, means being able to fit and fuse with the rule system of any world. Whether it's a universe dominated by superpowers like Marvel, or a world centered on cultivation like Xuanwan Shanja, or even a technologically advanced civilization like that in the three-body problem. The infinite serum could adapt itself, adjusting its structure to integrate into it. To put it more intuitively, if Josie had the opportunity to enter a high martial Xuanwan world, and wished to pursue the Tao of martial arts and longevity, but found that his physical body was different from the natives, inherently lacking a foundation, making him unable to step into the door of cultivation. At this point, the infinite serum could actively evolve a foundation for him, breaking this originally insoluble barrier. Of course, the actual operation would be far from this easy. To achieve this type of fundamental structural change, the serum needed to fuse with a large amount of supernatural power of the heavens. Only when the adaptability was strong enough could it support this transformation of the rule system. Thinking of this, Josie couldn't help but collect his thoughts. Currently, his most direct goal was to smelt the touch of calamity, obtained from Takahashi Neko, into the infinite serum, further enhancing its adaptability. More importantly, the strengthening of the infinite serum could further extend his residency time in the Marvel world. On the first day of his transmigration, Josie learned from the infinite furnace. He was not a conventional reincarnation or transmigration, but rather a soul smuggling through the void realm, simply put, an invasion by an extraterrestrial demon. This meant that he was an illegal resident here and would be instinctively rejected by the world's rules. If not for the infinite furnace being powerful enough to conceal the heavenly secrets for him, and coupled with the Marvel Universe's own numerous loopholes and countless parallel timelines, he would probably have been erased by the rules long ago. Setting aside everything else, the time variance authority alone would not let him off easily. Only when Josie completely adapted to the rules of the Marvel Universe could he truly break free from this restriction. In addition, the infinite serum had a hidden benefit. The transformation of his life essence allowed him to evolve from a mayfly beginner to a mayfly high tier, thereby increasing the upper limit quantity of his body's superpower capacity by 1 slot. Originally, besides the 3 abilities gifted by the Void Realm, he could at most accommodate 3 new ability slots, totaling 6. At first glance, it seemed like a lot, but in the Marvel Universe, where the extraordinary ran rampant, 6 seemed barely enough. But the fusion characteristic of the infinite serum directly broke this constraint. As long as he had enough time and life essence, he could infinitely stack and accommodate more. This made Josie truly realize. With the infinite serum as his foundation, he would embark on a path of infinite evolution that had virtually no end. With a thought, his consciousness delved into his spiritual world. The crimson light sphere representing the infinite serum slowly approached the azure small light sphere of the touch of calamity. The two gradually merged and transformed, finally condensing into a slightly larger crimson light mass. At the moment of fusion, a strange sensation arose from the depths of his heart. His black pupils suddenly constricted, and his sensory acuity skyrocketed. In an instant, he could see the subtle trajectories of microorganisms floating in the air, hear the sound of insects vibrating their wings in the dense forest 200 meters away, and even the air currents, atmospheric energy changes, and the spectral colors of light radiation within a radius of 400 to 500 meters, all entered his perception. So, this is the sensation Takahashi Neko experienced. No, this should be a super enhanced version after optimization by the infinite furnace and combined with my physique. An ordinary person's brain simply couldn't withstand such a massive flood of information. Just 1 second would be enough to shock her into idiocy. A torrent of information surged in like a raging tide. Josie's 5 senses trembled, and his brain operated at high speed, constantly sorting, filtering, and categorizing, adjusting and organizing the chaotic sensory feedback one by one. It took a full 2 hours for him to completely adapt to and guide the new ability. Opening his eyes, a silver gleam flashed in their depths. The precise perception range of psychic power telekinesis has actually expanded to a full 100 meters. And Josie looked at the pond in front of him, and the next moment, a mass of water silently rose into the air, slowly floating before him. Psychic power telekinesis is a common extraordinary system. But it is powerful and versatile. In many film and television works, there are super-powered individuals with strong mental energy or psychic power telekinesis, such as the well-known Professor X, Phoenix, and Scarlet Witch in the Marvel Universe. Initially, Josie was quite excited when he awakened his mental energy. After all, who doesn't dream of being a mage artillery? However, he was quickly disappointed. His mental energy was too weak. Aside from simple psychic detection, he had almost no means of psychic power telekinesis control, at most able to lift less than 0.3 grams of matter, roughly the weight of an embroidery needle. The control range was extremely small, only a few meters in radius. Now, he has finally broken through this barrier and gained a means of long-range attack. More importantly, after fusing with the touch of calamity, the microscopic discernment of his psychic power telekinesis increased by another magnitude, reaching the micrometer cellular level. A psychic power telekinesis coverage range of over 100 meters, a matter manipulation capability of nearly 2 kilograms, a brain information processing intensity comparable to a miniature supercomputer, and an information integration and crisis warning system with a range of nearly 500 meters. Combined with his physical body, which is as powerful as a small Hulk, his combat power can at least double. Furthermore, Josie could clearly feel that his mental energy was still slowly growing, showing strong potential. With a thought, relevant information appeared. Talent Bloodline 1/1 Infinite Serum, Bronze Common 2.1% Touch of Calamity. Creature Attributes 55 Right Pointing Arrow 61 Strength 13 Physique 15, Agility 14, Mental Energy 19. Bloodline Fusion 3/6 Iron Will, Steel Common 15%, Photographic Memory, Steel Common 8%, Wisdom Insight, Special. World Residency Time, 346 days 04 hours 36 minutes 11 seconds, Rule Adaptability 9.3%. All three-dimensional attributes of his physical body increased by 1 point, and his mental energy increased by 3 points, while the time he could stay in the world also increased by more than 3 months. Josie's lips curled up unconsciously, and he muttered in his heart, the leap in life's essence, there is nothing more beautiful in the world than this. The only regret was that his current psychic power telekinesis control precision still remained at the macroscopic matter level of micrometers. If he could raise it to the atomic level, he could not eat beef right now. As Josie familiarized himself with his new abilities, a commotion came from a distance. 2 off-road vehicles appeared at the edge of his mental perception, driving along a temporarily cleared path, with 2 men and 1 woman inside. It seems there's something going on. His psychic power telekinesis rippled slightly, drying the water stains on his clothes, and he got up and walked towards the wooden house. As soon as the off-road vehicle stopped, Joseph was the first to jump out. Seeing the tall figure walking towards him, his expression became serious, and his voice carried a heartfelt reverence. Sir. Ari and Lena followed closely, standing ramrod straight, their expressions equally devout and respectful. Josie was already used to this. The three, coming from elite special forces, always adhered to the principle of respecting the strong. Moreover, Josie was not only their savior but also possessed terrifying combat power almost like myths and legends. That overwhelming power left a deep imprint in their hearts. Besides shock and admiration, it also made them feel fortunate for their initial choice. After sweeping the surroundings with his mental energy to confirm safety, Josie nodded gently, "You've worked hard. Take a rest first." He moved the food and equipment from the car into the house, then led the others to sit in the woods, bringing out a large spread of food and fruit. Everyone ate while discussing the situation during this period. Josie sat on a thick tree stump, his gaze quickly scanning the information on the computer screen. Half a minute later, he looked up and asked, "So, all the other survivors have disappeared?" "That's right." Lena, beside him, looked grim. "According to the data and technology you provided, we intercepted some government surveillance data. We found that most of the survivors who escaped the experimental base did report to the police station, but they disappeared not long after. We found signs of SHIELD involvement. It seems Hydra's infiltration in America, the US, is more serious than expected." Josie's eyes were cold, and a large number of confidential documents seized from the research institute flashed in his mind. In California alone, there were 3 secret Hydra strongholds. Coupled with its infiltration of key departments such as the government and SHIELD, it was effortless for them to quietly eliminate some ordinary people. "It's a pity I blew up the research institute earlier." He closed his laptop, sighed, and shook his head. "I caused such a huge commotion, yet the US military and SHIELD showed no reaction." Pausing, Josie added, "Or rather, the commotion was suppressed by Hydra internally." However, fortunately, it was 1990, and satellite reconnaissance and big data surveillance were far from widespread. Hidden deep in the mountains over 1,000 kilometers away, the Snake Shield Bureau, derogatory term for SHIELD, would have difficulty finding them in a short time. "Hydra, they are truly detestable." Joseph and the other 2 gnashed their teeth. "We must make them pay the price." These days, the 3 had learned about Hydra's origins from Josie. They never imagined that Hydra, rumored to have been annihilated during World War II, would have such great power in America, the US, and they themselves almost died at the hands of these guys. Thinking about some of the information the Sir had revealed. Their homeland had been embroiled in geopolitical chaos for years, and behind it, these venomous snakes were fanning the flames. Only immense hatred remained in their hearts. Although Josie didn't explicitly state it, they thought of their own experiences and vaguely felt that even Sokovia's high-ranking officials might have been secretly controlled by Hydra. This helplessness and indignation were almost maddening. Fortunately, the situation was about to turn around. With the help of Sir, they would surely succeed in liberating Sokovia. "Sir, what should we do next?" Joseph asked, unable to contain his anticipation. For the past 2 months, they had been collecting intelligence on SHIELD and Hydra, and it seemed they were about to make a move. Josie glanced at them, his tone unhurried. "What about the intelligence on Howard Stark and Hank Pym that I asked you to investigate? How's the progress? We have some clues already." Among them, Howard, as the owner of Stark Industries, frequently appears as a public figure, and we have basically confirmed his whereabouts. As he spoke, Joseph handed over several newspapers and photos, all featuring reports about Howard and his wife. However, Hank Pym's whereabouts are currently unknown due to insufficient information, and we cannot yet determine his location. Josie glanced at the newspapers, noting the date May 27, 1990, and recalled a detail from the movie, Ant-Man, in his previous life. After 2 seconds of contemplation, he nodded, saying nothing more. "Let's eat first. Rest well these next few days and get enough sleep. After a while, you will be injected with the super soldier serum." Joseph and the other 2 were stunned, then immediately showed ecstatic expressions, their breathing becoming rapid. Super soldier serum. As soldiers, how could they not know what this was? It was the extraordinary potion that created the World War II legendary hero Captain America, the source of power countless soldiers dreamed of. The 3 exchanged glances, their eyes filled with uncontrollable excitement and longing. Ignoring their excitement, Josie grabbed an apple and put it into his mouth, contemplating his next moves. Howard Stark and Hank Pym, these 2 could absolutely be considered famous figures in the Marvel Universe. One was Iron Man's father and Captain America's friend, the other was the inventor of Pym particles and the prototype of the early super soldier, Ant-Man. What they held in their hands was exactly what he needed most right now, the Tesseract and Pym particles. Josie tapped the table lightly, his gaze fixed on the distant mountain outline, his thoughts churning. The infinite serum, modified by the infinite furnace, far exceeded expectations, and his physical body quality soared dozens of times. Unparalleled strength, astonishing speed, formidable defense, and terrifying recovery ability made him almost invincible. But problems followed. He needed to consume at least 10 kilograms of high-calorie food daily, his weight exceeded 500 kilograms, and his steps often shook the ground. Ordinary environments simply couldn't withstand his presence. With this physique, let alone infiltration, he couldn't even enter cities normally. The power he once yearned for had now become another kind of cage. What was more troublesome was that as he absorbed the first superpower, the strength of the infinite serum began to further increase, and his physique showed a subtle tendency to expand again, with a breakthrough to 3 meters in height just around the corner. He urgently needed a way to control this power, to be able to wield it at will. PIM particles happened to offer that possibility. Josie looked at his arms, cast like steel, feeling proud but also a bit troubled. Troubled by his insufficient strength. If he possessed the strength of Superman from DC, what kind of physique problem would there be? This was clearly a life art that the entire universe should cheer for. As for Howard Stark, the Tesseract in his possession was another crucial factor. The essence of PIM particles had almost touched multiple dimensions. To fuse it into his body, the life essence consumed would likely be an astronomical figure. Relying solely on the current accumulation rate, who knows how long it would take. And the Tesseract might provide enough energy and dimensional support. More importantly, this wondrous item, containing the Space Stone, would surely be able to smelt even greater divine power. The temporal particles on his item list were a product of his absorption of Tesseract energy obtained from the Hydra base, and the extraordinary fluctuations they exhibited made him exceptionally excited. His evolutionary instinct told him that he must obtain it. Therefore, the Space Stone had long become an indispensable member of his extraordinary item slot. Inside the tranquil canyon, 4 figures were busy at work. Metal pipelines extended from the wooden house, converging into a dark rock cave beneath a nearby cliff face, connecting to 3 metal pods embedded in the ground. Buzz. Accompanied by a low hum, a pale blue ripple swept across the ground, sparking a flash of fire. Well, it's finally built, Josie said, a satisfied smile appearing on his face as he felt the energy circuit gradually stabilize. I thought it would be done in 4 or 5 days, but it still took 2 weeks. As expected, without sufficient knowledge, trying to reconstruct the Vita Life equipment was still a bit too much. Hearing this, Joseph and the other 2, who were standing behind him, exchanged glances, their eyes filled with a strange look. In the past half-month, they had once again witnessed Josie's power, not in terms of combat strength, but in his wisdom, which far surpassed that of ordinary people. Relying solely on collected old appliances and metal materials, coupled with some rudimentary mechanical tools, Josie had actually managed to restore Hydra's Vita experimental device. That series of almost magical operations completely overturned their understanding of technology and human limits. It should be known that although Sokovia, where the 3 of them came from, was only a small Eastern European country, as elite special forces personnel at the national level, their IQs, if not 1 in 10,000, were at least outstanding, and they understood some basic scientific common sense and industrial principles. The Vita device, as the core instrument for activating the super soldier serum, had such high technical content that every component theoretically had to be manufactured by military-grade precision equipment. But Josie, with just some Hydra blueprints, had painstakingly crafted it by hand. To exaggerate, he, almost alone, had trampled the entire industrial system of the world underfoot, practically a living, bio-industrial mother machine. Noticing the change in their emotions, Josie chuckled inwardly but did not explain anything. The reason he was able to complete the reconstruction of the Vita device in such a short time was not entirely dependent on his own abilities. Indeed, after his telekinesis broke through the limitations of reality, he could do many things that conventional tools could not. As long as he had blueprints, he could manufacture and assemble most mechanical parts with his telekinesis. However, in some special domains, he still could not get involved. For example, biological cell interference, or microelectronic manufacturing. He was temporarily unable to perform operations in these domains involving nanoscale and submicron scale. His current telekinesis precision was about 50 micrometers, just enough to reach the cellular level. Compared to the current 0.08 micrometer 80 nanometers chip manufacturing technology, he was 3 orders of magnitude short, far from enough. Some key controllers of the Vita device were actually original components they had brought out from the Hydra research facility. Of course, a large amount of technical knowledge involved was also acquired through intensive study in these past few months. Superimposed with the constant excavation of various memory fragments from his previous life in the 21st century by his super brain, the massive amount of information he had glimpsed on the internet all transformed into his scientific nourishment. Alright, the Vita system debugging is complete, we can start injecting the serum, Josie said, closing the control panel after confirming the system was running stably, and instructed the three. However, I must warn you, although I have made some optimizations to the super soldier serum, the enhancement process will still be extremely painful. A slight carelessness could lead to mental derangement and organ failure, in severe cases, genetic collapse and immediate death. At this point, he paused, his gaze falling on the three of them. Are you sure you are ready? Sir, we are very sure. Without the slightest hesitation, the three of them looked at Josie with firm expressions and burning eyes, the fire of indomitable will blazing in their depths. Even Lena, the youngest and physically weakest, showed no wavering in her eyes. They knew very well that this choice represented not only themselves but also their relatives still struggling in the flames of war, and their ill-fated homeland, Sokovia. There was no room for retreat. Feeling the surging spiritual will of the three, a hint of respect flashed in Josie's eyes. Perhaps it was precisely because of this character that they were not chosen by Hydra for brainwashing and recruitment, but were directly listed as experimental subjects. The metal pods opened, and the three changed into loose experimental suits, lying down in the energy pods in turn. Josie took a metal box from the wooden house and opened it with a snap. 30 dark blue serums were neatly arranged, with specks of silver light flowing within the crystals, like rotating miniature galaxies, beautiful beyond compare. This was the result of him spending over 100 points of life essence, purifying and optimizing Hydra's inferior serum step by step, reaching excellent quality. Compared to the original turbid, reddish inferior product, this batch of agents significantly improved in stability and enhancement effects, with side effects compressed to negligible. Vita system activated, preheating injection slots. 6 mechanical arms automatically unfolded, accurately inserting the 30 serums into the injection slots. The operation interface lit up, displaying the physical data of the three. Josie calmly scanned it once, and after confirming everything was correct, pulled down the control lever. Hiss. Amidst the harsh sound of high-pressure pumping, 1,000 milliliters of thick liquid were evenly pushed into each person's body. Activate Vita Ray. The next moment, pale blue energy was instantly released, sweeping across the entire rock cave and canyon. The air vibrated violently, and a layer of blue plasma flame permeated the surroundings, with streaks of light appearing on the ground's wiring. Fortunately, Josie had long anticipated this situation. An invisible telekinetic barrier unfolded, instantly sealing off a 100-meter radius. All energy was concentrated between the wooden house and the 3 metal pods, unable to leak even a bit. Ah! Violent screams of pain came from the metal pods. The enhancement had begun. High-intensity life radiation activated the serum, and the 3 people's bodies showed violent reactions. Under the telekinetic vision, cells were penetrated and pierced by layers of rays, stimulating genetic material to react with the serum, repeatedly tempering and transforming the genes. Muscle fibers ruptured and reorganized, bones were stretched, compressed, and strengthened, and skin rapidly repaired after being burned. The entire process would last for half an hour. Even the 3 who had undergone special combat training were already dazed, enduring purely by instinct, barely maintaining clarity. Josie's eyes flashed with admiration. The willpower displayed by the 3 had reached the pinnacle of humanity, at least an adamantium-level iron will. In reality, an excellent grade serum almost certainly would not fail to enhance, with side effects greatly suppressed. The reason Josie emphasized danger was merely to test the 3 and simultaneously stimulate their positive qualities, just as Steve Rogers' righteous character would be amplified during the enhancement process. Evidently, their obsession with their loved ones and homeland, as well as their hatred for Hydra, enabled them to display extraordinary resilience and guide the serum for specific enhancements. Time passed, until a certain moment. Energy radiation began to dissipate around the capsule, indicating that the three could no longer absorb it, and the enhancement was nearing its end. Indeed, the excellent grade serum truly surpasses the Captain America version. Josie raised his hand and pressed a button, cutting off the energy supply. Boom. Mechanical gears turned, alloy cabin doors opened, and a large amount of steam rose. In the thick mist, three figures stepped out. Joseph and Allie, both of whom had grown to over 1 meter 90 in height, possessed steel-forged muscle lines, like ancient Greek sculptures, their aura terrifying. Their faces also underwent subtle changes. Their originally hard and resolute contours became more three-dimensional and softer, exuding an innate sense of affinity. Lena, as a woman, was even more stunning. This already beautiful and valiant female warrior's appearance was now simply flawless. Her facial features were exquisitely refined, her pale blue pupils sharp and deep, her tall figure exceeding 1 meter 85, and even the loose experimental suit could not conceal her astonishing waist-to-hip curve. Her heroism exuded a hint of charm, giving her an extremely penetrating beauty. Her almost transcendent allure made even Josie, protected by his iron will, his eyes subtly brighten. After observing the three for a moment, Josie roughly assessed the effects of this batch of serum. Whether in terms of temperament, physique, or combat power, they had all reached the peak human form, stronger and with greater potential than the super soldiers he knew from movies in his previous life. According to Josie's conservative estimate, it was at least 3 times more effective than ordinary serum, equivalent to a miniature Spider-Man. As for whether it could surpass Captain America, he couldn't say for sure. After all, that person not only underwent deep activation through life radiation but also possessed the unpredictable factor of a protagonist halo, leading to highly variable combat power. How do you feel? Josie asked. Strength, surging endlessly. Joseph lightly clenched his fist and swung it forward, producing a soft whoosh in the air. Too strong. This feeling is incredible. Bang. Creak. Lena and Allie, who were beside him, also tested their newly acquired strength. Hard rocks were crushed into powder with a single kick, alloy daggers were twisted into pretzels by hand, and boulders weighing 100 caddies were casually thrown dozens of meters away. Josie smiled faintly and instructed, for the next week, you should familiarize yourselves with the changes in your bodies as quickly as possible. Many future actions will be inconvenient for me to handle directly, so I will need you to take care of them. Understood, sir, the three responded in unison. Subsequently, he imparted some of the power utilization techniques he had discovered to the three, helping them quickly master their enhanced, new bodies. With the memory and perception capabilities of their enhanced super brains, the three should be able to adapt to their dramatically increased strength very quickly. After giving his instructions, Josie extracted some blood samples from them and turned to enter a nearby cave. Inside the cave, neatly arranged experimental equipment was set up, and a temporarily assembled server hummed away. In a glass box in the corner, a dozen white mice actively scurried about, chirping incessantly and full of vitality. This rudimentary biological laboratory was about to produce a super soldier serum formula worth tens of billions of dollars. Josie sat on the ground and opened the computer on the stone platform. Mental power surged, and the keys on the keyboard began to dance, as sets of experimental data were rapidly entered into the system. At the same time, he retrieved 2 pale red, turbid potions from the cold storage box, the inferior Hydra serum prepared earlier. 2 fingers twirled lightly, creating a series of blurred afterimages. Under the dual interference of telekinesis and centrifugal force, the crystal quickly stratified, separating into 4 distinct material structures of different colors. Thud. Josie's hand gestures rotated continuously, and his telekinetic power picked up a drop of Joseph's blood sample, precisely injecting it into the second layer of translucent flocculent substance. The moment they made contact, the flocculent substance instantly dissolved, transforming into sticky liquid droplets, faintly revealing a dazzling sky blue hue. However, before the blue color could fully form, the liquid rapidly congealed, transforming back into a mass of blood-colored flocculent substance. Seeing this, Josie's lips curved into a slight, satisfied smile. Indeed, my previous speculation was correct. The true formula for the super serum is indeed hidden deep within human genes. No wonder it could be elevated to an infinite serum by the infinite forge. The true potential of the serum is far beyond what so-called super soldiers can achieve. With a shift of his telekinetic power, the substances within the crystal instantly disintegrated, turning into ashes and falling into a nearby waste container, as he continued to input the remaining experimental data into the system. Josie had not been idle for the past 3 months. Besides deeply mastering his own abilities, he had dedicated a significant amount of time to studying and researching the super soldier serum. Having such powerful intelligence in this life, it would be inexcusable not to fully utilize it. Moreover, the original data he had plundered from Hydra naturally couldn't be wasted. The Marvel Universe was filled with extraordinary treasures, and he had to seize every opportunity to strengthen himself as much as possible to cope with the unknown journey through the myriad realms a year later. And to thrive and grow in this world, he couldn't rely solely on himself. He needed a strong team, enough reliable extraordinary combat power to eliminate all potential threats, and the super soldier serum was the best choice at present. The success of Lena and the other two was achieved through the brute force cracking of the Infinite Forge. But for future large-scale expansion, it was impossible to constantly rely on precious life essence. To build a true power base, a complete and controllable serum formula was imperative. Now, he already possessed a practical finished serum, even one that far surpassed the original in performance, and the remaining formula reconstruction was only a matter of time. At the current research pace, it could be completed in at most half a year. If assisted by top-tier equipment, 4 months or even less was not impossible. Half a month flew by, and the time came to late May. Under Josie's guidance, Lena and the other two completely familiarized themselves with their enhanced bodies. Without delay, they immediately began making arrangements. Joseph and Ali went their separate ways to several surrounding towns, responsible for purchasing weapons, materials and food supplies to ensure what was needed for their long journey. At the same time, they collected intelligence and assisted Lena in mapping out the route and waypoints to New York. Additionally, with Lena's assistance, Josie produced firearms and equipment for them in the laboratory. This operation was highly likely to involve conflicts with S.H.I.E.L.D., and even the American military, so how could they do without the truth weapons? Under telekinetic control, mechanical modules were assembled, spliced, and welded together, rapidly forming individual exoskeletons designed specifically for super soldiers. These weapons, drawing on future engineering concepts and technology, were enough to further boost their combat power significantly. As long as they didn't encounter indiscriminate missile bombardments, they could retreat safely from any danger. However, just as Josie was fully prepared and armed to head to New York, a sudden piece of news plunged him into a brief silence. Howard Stark attacked, almost dead. He looked down at the newspaper, his gaze quickly scanning the news page, his brows slightly furrowed. This is a bit troublesome. Hydra's assassination is a whole year earlier than expected. According to reports, about 2 weeks prior, a Stark manor on Long Island, New York, was attacked by unknown individuals. Howard Stark and his 19-year-old son, Tony Stark, were both seriously injured and unconscious, and parts of the manor's facilities were severely damaged. Due to the suddenness of the incident and its involvement of core members of Stark Industries, the entire event was highly classified. The scene was jointly managed by S.H.I.E.L.D. and multiple security agencies, with almost no public awareness. It wasn't until 2 days ago when a local Long Island police officer, while drunk and chatting in a bar, inadvertently leaked a few words, which were caught by local media, and the news began to spread. Currently, Stark Industries is temporarily managed by Howard's wife, Maria Stark. Due to the simultaneous incident involving both the chairman and the sole heir, the company's stock price plummeted by 12% in just 2 days. Competitors like Hammer Industries and Roxxon Energy seized the opportunity to cause trouble, and negative public opinion continued to ferment. If not for Stark Industries' solid foundation and the support of the military and high-ranking government officials behind it, it probably wouldn't have been so calm. As things currently stood, Stark Industries was in a precarious situation. The world's largest super-military industrial complex, with its vast underlying resource chain and technological accumulation, was enough to attract countless covetous eyes. In the past, with Howard at the helm, he firmly controlled the situation with his brilliant mind and political acumen. Now, With his wife Maria, a woman, in charge, the pressure and resistance women faced in that era were far less lenient than in the 21st century. Just the internal conflicts and squabbles within the group were enough to drag her into the mud. Is it because of my influence? In Josie's memory, Marvel's setting was that Howard and his wife were assassinated by the Winter Soldier, Bucky, on December 16, 1991, on their way to the Pentagon, disguised as a car accident. Now, the butterfly effect had appeared. Josie exhaled lightly, his eyes deep. Plans can't keep up with changes. Iron Man is about to die before he even appears. This is truly unpredictable. He quickly snapped out of his contemplation, a thought flashing through his mind. Perhaps, this is a good opportunity. The accident involving Howard and his son undoubtedly disrupted Josie's plans. But it was also an opportunity. The capital, technology, and military-industrial resources involved with Stark Industries were almost unparalleled in the world at that time. If he could intervene during its turmoil, not only would his own strength advance further, but he would also have the chance to acquire a large amount of technological resources to cope with the chaotic situation in the future. In that case, we should also act. Time was pressing, and Josie decided to leave immediately. Early morning, a sliver of light just appeared on the mountainside. A roar echoed through the silent forest, and several strong beams of light pierced through the darkness. The next second, two Jeep off-road vehicles burst out of the forest, leaping onto the center of the mountain road. Close behind, a clearly modified black Kenworth T800 heavy truck suddenly roared out, its giant wheels kicking up large amounts of mud. Screech. The harsh sound of tires rubbing reverberated through the mountains, as the convoy sped away, leaving deep tire tracks on the wet mountain road. Inside the heavy truck's cab, Joseph stared at the satellite navigation, Josie's words from a few hours ago echoing in his mind. The incident with Howard and his son was most likely the work of Hydra. Our goal for this operation is to use this opportunity to acquire the power of Stark Industries, using its resources as a springboard to eliminate Hydra's forces in Sokovia. Afterward, reshape Sokovia's national system and make it serve me. Do you have any questions? Josie's tone was calm, not hiding his intentions in the slightest. Facing this blunt declaration, Joseph, Lena, and Ali all looked serious. Regarding his bold words, the three had not a shred of doubt. Through their interactions over this period, they already knew the kind of power he wielded. After a brief silence, Lena was the first to speak. If you control Sokovia, it might be the right choice. Sir gave me a new life, I will follow in your footsteps. The second to speak was Ali, the usually quiet young man, who now made his choice. Immediately after, Joseph also stated his position. The three had no aversion to Josie's ambition to transcend national authority. Compared to being devoured by corrupt and dirty parasites, allowing their homeland to become a battlefield for great powers, following a transcendent being like a god and creating a new era was a choice any normal person would make. Moreover, Josie had also made a promise. You actually don't have to worry that I will be a dictator or exploit Sokovia. All I want is a rear base that can provide me with research and resources. Do you think power and money have any meaning to me? Yes, with Sir's formidable power, these things are merely within easy reach. Thinking of his wife and daughter, who were waiting anxiously for him to return home thousands of miles away, only to be told of his death, he realized how difficult survival would be. Joseph became increasingly convinced that choosing to follow Josie was the most correct decision of his life. Feeling the surging power within his body, the super soldier silently thought, it won't be long, wait for me to return. 10 hours later, the convoy traversed over 300 kilometers. The terrain ahead was open, with yellowish-brown hills and Gobi stretching to the horizon, dotted with sparse shrubs, and fine sand and gravel carried on the wind. The cliff to the left ahead, go there, Josie's voice came through the communicator. Upon hearing this, Lena and the other two quickly adjusted their direction, steering the convoy into a hidden crevice in the cliff on the left. The three vehicles slowed down and stopped in sequence. The group then entered the heavy truck's compartment. The compartment's interior was clearly specially modified, having already been transformed into a mobile command center. Josie sat in the center, raising his hand to pull down an electronic screen from above his head, which clearly displayed a satellite topographical map of the vicinity. Our current location is here. He pointed to a blinking green dot on the screen, then marked a red spot in the northeast direction, Hydra Base, about 50 kilometers to the northeast. Rest and replenish your energy first, then we'll act after dark. Before heading to New York, Josie still had one thing he had to accomplish. Go to a Hydra base and retrieve a crucial item. After learning about Howard and his son's situation, to gather more accurate intelligence, he used his newly acquired hacking skills to infiltrate the U.S. communications satellite system. In his previous life, Josie studied computer science. Although his skills were quite ordinary, he had some understanding of hacking techniques. Coupled with the massive amount of information fragments from the internet age stored in his mind. This allowed him to easily pry open America's network defenses using the technological gap of the 21st century, obtaining some key intelligence, including the internal situation of Stark Industries. Sure enough, Howard's condition was very dire, almost on the verge of death. If not for Stark Industries' immense wealth and the use of a large number of advanced equipment and medical resources, he would have surely perished long ago. As for the future Iron Man, Tony Stark. Though not life-threatening, he was suspected to have suffered severe spinal damage in the explosion, leading to paralysis. With current medical methods, there was almost no hope for either of them to recover. Fortunately, this world is called Marvel, a universe where advanced technology is everywhere for the taking, and super-powered individuals are as common as dogs. Even more coincidentally, Hydra happened to have something that could save them, bioenergy fluid. This was a type of super stimulant for battlefields, capable of providing a massive amount of high-energy nutrients to living organisms in a short period, and rapidly repairing damaged cells and tissues. Theoretically, it could be used to treat most physical injuries. However, its flaws were equally astonishing. Once consumed, the user would fall into a continuous bloodthirsty frenzy, attacking all living beings around them until their physical strength was exhausted or their cells collapsed and died. But for Josie, this was not a problem. Optimizing it with the infinite furnace, removing side effects was easy, turning waste into treasure. He already knew the exact location of the potion. The Hydra mainframes brought out of the research institute had already been completely deciphered by him, clearly marking several secret experimental bases in the Nevada mountains. One of these laboratories specialized in human life extension and cell repair technology, which was the source of the bioenergy fluid. It was like getting a pillow when you're sleepy. So, Josie decided to make a detour first to get his hands on the repair potion. He figured this item should be able to fetch him quite a few good things from Stark. Time flew, and night fell. Several dark figures leapt and darted between the hills and the Gobi, leaving streaks of afterimages under the faint moonlight, kicking up clouds of dust wherever they went. They covered the 50-kilometer rugged journey in less than 20 minutes. Stop. With a low shout, the four instantly halted. Josie released his psychic power telekinesis, instantly enveloping a 100-meter radius, quickly pinpointing the exact location of the Hydra base. You all stay here, I'll scout the surroundings first. Before his words finished, his figure had vanished without a trace. To prevent the base from having hidden escape routes, he needed to investigate beforehand and block the enemy's retreat. And clearly, the cunning Hydra spared no effort in ensuring their survival. Josie soon discovered that the surrounding mountains and underground artificial waterways of this laboratory were all equipped with high-speed escape trains and small submarines. Unfortunately, they wouldn't have a chance to escape. Silver light burst from Josie's pupils, piercing the air as if tangible. His psychic power telekinesis vibrated wildly, and an invisible ripple swept out, as precise as nanofilaments. Approximately 30 meters underground, in the escape trains and submarines, some core components disintegrated on the spot, turning into fine dust. Having finished, Josie let out a light breath, the silver glow in his eyes gradually fading. This psychic blade is indeed difficult. Beyond 30 meters, I can't maintain it for even 10 minutes. He felt the consumption of his mental energy, a thoughtful look flashing in his eyes. Ultimately, my mental energy strength is still insufficient. I need to find a way to get some super-powered substances related to mental energy to make up for this shortcoming. Psionic high-frequency blade. It was a special long-range attack method developed by Josie, combining his super brainpower. Due to the limited amount of matter he could control, it was difficult to use large-scale weapons. Therefore, he used the computing power of his super brain to construct dynamic models, supplemented by micrometer-level precision psionic control, causing air molecules to vibrate at high speeds within a 0.3 mm cross-section. This formed an invisible, high-frequency blade, tens of meters long, that could easily cut through most obstacles. Its destructive power was terrifying. However, the consumption was equally frightening. During combat, it could only maintain a circular defensive range of 3 meters in diameter for at most half an hour before his mental energy would be completely depleted. And the greater the distance, the greater the consumption. After blocking Hydra's retreat, Josie took off the backpack behind him and pulled out more than a dozen gray-black metal discs, each the size of a football. He arranged the discs on the ground one by one, then took out a laptop, his psionic power manipulating the keyboard to type rapidly. A few seconds later, these discs transformed into drones and ascended, carrying full-spectrum signal jamming systems, quickly spreading to the surrounding airspace and ground of the base. According to psionic scans, a large number of surveillance devices were deployed around the base ahead. In this operation, Josie not only had to destroy the laboratory, but also to preserve the technical data within it as completely as possible, so he had to ensure that any anomaly at the base would not be detected by the outside world for a short period of time. After the deployment was complete, he quietly returned to the rendezvous point. "Sir, how are things?" Seeing him return, Joseph and the other two immediately gathered around. Josie nodded and whispered, "It's pretty much as expected." As he spoke, he took out his computer, displayed the internal structure map of the Hydra base he had just created, and began to assign tasks. "This time, I'm responsible for external support, and the three of you will be the main assault force, clearing all targets within 15 minutes. The three had no objections to this arrangement. Sir had already arranged everything, they only needed to crush the enemy completely. What's more, they had received such powerful enhancements and advanced equipment. If they couldn't even complete this small task, they would truly disgrace the super soldiers. At this moment, if anyone could see the state of Joseph and the other two, they would surely be stunned. The three were covered in a layer of gray-black battle armor, with complex mechanical structures vaguely visible beneath the heavy metal shell, and crimson light emanating from their helmet visors, exuding a sense of bloodlust and oppression. On the back of the armor, a faint blue energy current flowed along the lines, precisely transmitting Tesseract energy to every power node, granting the user several times the attribute amplification. Heavy exoskeleton armor had initially taken shape in the 21st century. Now, with the blessing of the Tesseract energy battery, it had appeared in this world first, even before Tony Stark's Iron Man suit. However, due to the rushed development, and the fact that Josie had not systematically studied mechanical and electronic engineering, this set of armor still had a very large gap compared to a true Iron Man suit. To say nothing else, the Iron Man suits, tank bombardment immunity, and several Mach-level instant acceleration, inertial dampening system alone were technical bottlenecks he currently found difficult to overcome. Therefore, this could only be considered a heavy exoskeleton, rather than a true powered armor. Only enhanced super soldiers could withstand the enormous load and energy backlash of this thing. An ordinary person wearing it would be crushed to death the moment they moved. In that case, let's move out. At Josie's command, the three figures blurred into afterimages, swiftly sweeping towards the entrance of the Hydra base. At the same time, the signal jamming devices deployed around them were simultaneously activated, cutting off all communication signals within a 10-kilometer radius. Europe, Hydra's Austrian base, central office. Daniel Whitehall, with a head full of white hair, was staring at the experimental data in his hand, his pupils gleaming with excitement. Good, very good. Inform California's 4th laboratory to strictly guard that experimental subject. I will personally go to inspect it in a few days. A distorted fanaticism appeared on his wrinkled face, and Daniel murmured, "This will be the greatest breakthrough of the 20th century. Hydra will usher in evolution." How many years has it been? Since the end of World War II, he had been arrested by SHIELD for the obelisk human experimentation case, and he had wasted most of his life in prison. When he was released a year ago, his 70-year-old body was already decaying, and the Hydra he had once served had long become dust in history. He had thought that his life would simply fade away and end in obscurity. But he never expected that Hydra had not been destroyed, but had instead lurked in a more secretive form. Its power was even greater, and its foundation was deeper. Almost without hesitation, he accepted the invitations of Dr. Zola and Alexander Pierce, rejoined, and continued to fight for his unfulfilled ideals. What made him even more ecstatic was an unexpected piece of intelligence half a year ago. Jia Ying, an Asian woman who had participated in the obelisk experiment in 1945 and miraculously survived, had not aged a bit, her appearance unchanged. Daniel quickly realized that this was likely because the obelisk had activated some special ability within her. If he could unlock the secret, he might be able to regain his youth and live another life. Thinking of this, he recalled the accident 5 months ago. Strucker, that idiot, actually let the experimental subject escape and even caused so many researchers to die. I really don't know how he's still alive today. Just thinking about the Jia Ying related data that was destroyed due to that accident filled his heart with an unquenchable anger. If it weren't for that incident, Jia Ying should have been brought to the experimental table long ago, and he would have been able to regain his youth sooner. Why would it have dragged on for so long? Fortunately, although it took some time, we finally caught this woman. As Daniel was immersed in his fantasies of the future, a Hydra officer in uniform rushed in, reporting with a grave expression, "Doctor, California's 4th Research Institute appears to have been invaded by an unknown force, and has been completely out of contact 6 hours ago. According to news from the North American branch, the relevant experimental subjects and data have all been basically destroyed." What? Say that again. Daniel suddenly stood up from his chair, knocking over the water cup and documents beside him. The officer was startled and quickly replied, "The message was sent personally by Dr. Zola, so it can be basically confirmed." He also added the latest intelligence. The reception key for the security device he deployed at the Research Institute has an error, and the signal from California's 4th laboratory seems to have been completely isolated. Daniel's face immediately turned ashen, and he said word by word, "Continue to monitor, and report any movement immediately." "Yes, doctor." After the officer left, he looked at Jia Ying's information on the table, his thoughts somewhat dazed. New life seemed to be getting further and further away from him. Time returned to 6 hours ago. On both sides of the entrance to California's 4th laboratory, stood several extraordinarily robust and burly figures. Under the faint moonlight, a black line suddenly extended from 100 meters away, directly crashing into the metal door hidden by rocks, making intimate contact. Boom! A thunderous explosion tore through the silent night, then was dissolved into nothingness by an invisible psionic barrier. The moment the two made contact, the 20-centimeter thick alloy door twisted violently, collapsing in less than 2 seconds and exploding into a large number of metal fragments that blasted deep into the passage. What was that? A team of patrolling Hydra soldiers had just noticed the anomaly. Before they could finish speaking, an overwhelming barrage of iron chunks, like cannonballs, shot towards them. They had no time to react as dense iron chunks, like cannonballs, streaked past, leaving behind plumes of blood mist. Thump 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 thump. Suddenly, heavy, rapid footsteps came from the end of the passage. Severely wounded and dying, 2 Hydra soldiers struggled to lift their heads, only to see 3 ferocious steel giants flash past them. Bang! A thumb-thick bullet pierced an eye socket, and the skull directly exploded. The remaining consciousness was swallowed by the crimson, leaving only a deep confusion. Thanks for watching.